Hello, my name is Jimmy and this is the 2023 Kia Soul. This is really the last box on wheels type of, miniature SUVs that you can really get. There's no Honda Element, there's no Scion XB, there's no Nissan Cube. This is it. This particular vehicle that we have here is the Canadian spec GT Limited. So basically the top of the range here in Canada, and as spec 32,000 Canadian dollars. I know in the US, the GT line is one lower than the EX Premium, but here in Canada, this is the top of the line. So it's a little different, but anyways, let me tell you everything you need to know about it, starting with the looks. For 2023, the entire front end has been restyled. As said, this is the GT line, so you get a more aggressive front bumper, but every trim from like the second trim up, so EX and up, do get these reflector LED headlamps. You don't get that whole divorced headlamp look anymore. It's just all integrated on the top. But you do lose out on the projector headlamps that once were an option. On the side here, depending on trim, it varies, but these are 18s. I think the base are 16s with steel wheels. And you get basically a slab side here, as it is basically a box on wheels. You do get proximity door locks on the front, so you can lock and unlock the front doors, but unfortunately, not the rear. No sensor here. And then in the back, you get these really beautiful LED tail lamps, and it's basically flat all the way down. But I really like this whole Kia badging in the center. It actually looks quite cool. And with this, the GT line, you get a center exhaust. It just looks cool. The Soul, unlike other vehicles on the road, it stands out, especially in this blue. Unfortunately, here in Canada, you can't get the dual tone that you can get in the US, which is a little odd. If we open up the trunk, there is a manual tailgate, no automated option here, but you actually get a decent amount of space. With the cargo floor on the lower position, you get 23.4 cubic feet. If you put it to the upper, 18.7. You can fold down the rear seats and that expands it to 62.1 cubic feet. And there's plenty of space here. You got your subwoofer on the side. It's actually a really spacious trunk. But let's head inside. All right, the back seats of the Soul. I'm 5'11" and I got plenty of headroom, and legroom is also really good. It's actually quite spacious in here. I have heated seats as it is the top of the line. And I have a center armrest with integrated cup holders. It's comfortable. It's actually a good place to be. And you get USB ports as well. If you're going to be carrying your family in this, I am a child passenger safety technician. And as you can see here on the passenger side, I got my Kleck 5. This is a rear-facing child seat, and I have no problems fitting that seat in here. And I'm still able to sit in front at 5'11". On the driver's side here, this is a Kleck Ling, an infant seat. As you can see, the doors open decently wide, still allowing you to have easy access to the rear cabin here. So putting that infant carrier in and out, really, there's no problems. There's two sets of lower anchors, one on the driver's side and one on the passenger side. Both are a little difficult to get into as they're like in between the seats, but once you're in there, you're basically good. You do get three upper anchors as well, and the headrests, they're removable for boosters and whatnot, so it's actually not too bad. But let's head up to the front. All right, the front seats of the Kia Soul. The seats themselves are actually quite bolstered, so they hold you nice and tight inside. They are heated and cooled, not something that you generally see in this class of car. In front of me, I do have a leather steering wheel with this beautiful red stitching. It is a D shape, so you do get a little bit of that flat bottom, which I like. And behind that, you do get a digital cluster. The digital cluster is not like digital in the sense it's a complete screen. You do get a screen in the center, but the readouts for your tach as well as your speed, they're just line segments. So they're not like the most amazing thing, but it does the job, and it's definitely a little bit newer tech in terms of, the cluster comparing to the old analog cluster. You don't get a heads-up display anymore, so none of that, but you still get this widescreen infotainment, and it has a Harman Kardon system. It sounds okay. It's definitely not like the best sounding audio system in the world, but it's a $30,000 subcompact SUV. That's kind of what you expect. You do have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but you do have to plug it in to the USB port down below. You also get dual zone climate control, which is actually really good because you and your passengers, you might not have the same climates. You can change that. I love that. And you also have a Qi wireless charger down low as well. It's, okay of a cabin, sure. It's still a $30,000 car. You're not expecting the best in terms of materials, and it's not. But the places that you do feel, touch, it's actually not too bad. The only thing that I would complain is because of kind of how I sit and my height, my knees hit the center console and the side, and these parts are a little bit harder than I like. And because of that, just my knees are getting a little bit hurt. But that's really it. Let's talk a little bit about the powertrain. Under the hood, we get a 2-liter 4-cylinder. Sadly, the 1.6 turbo is no longer an option. We get 147 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque paired with the IVT, their intelligent variable transmission. Essentially, it's a CVT, but with actually decent logic. And honestly, I think actually this IVT that they have actually works pretty well. I know there's a lot of hate out there for the CVT transmission, but in cars like this, honestly, it makes sense. There's no shift points. It's seamless from the minute you start pressing that throttle down. So it makes sense. And acceleration isn't all that bad. You can get to highway speeds in about 8 seconds, which sure is not the fastest thing, but it's almost 2 seconds faster than the Nissan Kicks. And that is, well, quite acceptable to a lot of people. So this little box, I don't mind it. The only thing is, when you do floor it, you do have to have a little bit of that whine, but because of the logic that's built in, it simulates gear shifts, and it actually does a pretty good job at it. You can throw it over to sport mode and downshift and upshift as you like, but the shifts are so smooth from one gear to another that it just sounds kind of weird. Honestly, you leave it on drive and just let it do its thing. It's completely fine. But this is not the type of vehicle people are kind of like throwing into like corners and whatnot. But you kind of can because it's so light. It's such a small, light vehicle. It's actually fun. And that's the best part about something like this. Small, light, nimble vehicle just is more fun. And it's easier for the manufacturer as well. When a vehicle is heavier, they have to like tune the suspension in a way that, well, it's more compliant, but still the spring has to be stiffer and the damper. Like there's a lot more work on a heavier car than a lighter car. This vehicle, it's not soft. Like the suspension, there's still some firmness into it. When you go over a bump though, the damping just works well because it's a lighter vehicle. Unlike the Sportage that I had a couple weeks ago where I was like floating over bumps, this doesn't feel like that whatsoever. It's a lot more, well, confidence inspiring, and because of that, I actually really like it. On the highway, because once again, this is the top trim, I have all the safety features that I really need. The adaptive cruise works really well, the lane keep also works really well, but unfortunately, here in Canada at least, only available on the top trim. So you get some safety features, but not as good as these on lower trims. And that's the only kind of negative to it. You do have to step up to this to get everything that you want. But the more common trim is probably the EX, so 1 up, or the EX plus sunroof, basically. Those are the kind of the more common trims and the one that people kind of go for. At $32,000, with kind of how this is equipped, honestly, it's not that bad. And if you really want like a hybrid, for example, Kia has you covered. You can go with the Niro, for example. And if you're like, I really want a Soul with all-wheel drive, well, just get the Seltos. It's basically the same. You can get that same engine and the IVT that's in here. And with the Seltos, you can get the 1.6 as well. Or if you want, you can step into a full EV Soul. Gives you options. EV Soul's a lot more money than this, though. That's the only thing. But that's really it. Thanks for coming along with me for a ride in the Soul. No hamsters here, unfortunately, but in any case, I'll catch you later. Have a great day. Take care.